I never meant to read Oliver's diary. As a mother, I'd always respected my 16-year-old son's privacy. But when I found it while clearing out his room 2 weeks after the funeral, something felt different about this one. It wasn't like his other journals. This was older, worn, with a strange symbol etched into its leather cover. The official story was that Oliver had died in a tragic hiking accident. He'd gone out with his best friend Marcus to take photos for their school photography project. According to Marcus, Oliver had slipped while trying to get the perfect shot of the sunset over Miller's Ridge. By the time help arrived, it was too late. I'd accepted this version of events, painful as it was, until I opened that diary. The earliest entries were typical teenage stuff, complaints about school, crush confessions, family arguments. But about 3 months before his death, the tone changed dramatically. Something's following us in the woods. Men says I'm paranoid, but I know what I saw. Those aren't normal shadows. I remembered that day. Oliver had come home early from his photo shoot with Marcus, unusually quiet and pale. When I asked what was wrong, he'd mumbled something about not feeling well and locked himself in his room. The entries grew more disturbing. The photos aren't right. Every time I develop them, there's something in the background. A figure, it's getting closer in each shot. M thinks it's cool, says we should keep taking pictures. I'm not so sure anymore. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. Oliver had always been interested in photography, spending hours in the school's darkroom developing his shots. I'd encouraged his hobby, proud of his artistic eye. Now each memory of his photography felt tainted. M is different lately. Ever since we started this project, he's changed. His eyes look wrong sometimes, especially when we're in the darkroom. Today he suggested going back to Miller's Ridge. Said we need one final shot. I don't want to go, but he's insistent. Says I don't have a choice. The last regular entry was dated the day before the accident. If anything happens to me, it's not what they'll say it is. M isn't M anymore. I've seen what he becomes in the shadows. Mom, if you're reading this, check the photos in my red envelope. But whatever you do, don't develop them in the dark. Then impossibly, there was one final entry, dated 3 days after we buried him. It's not over. He's still out there, still wearing Marcus's face. And he's watching you now, Mom. I slammed the diary shut, my heart pounding. The house suddenly felt too quiet, too dark. I looked up at Oliver's wall of photographs, seeing them with new eyes. In every recent shot with Marcus, his friend's face was slightly blurred, as if the camera couldn't quite capture his features. The red envelope, I knew exactly where it was. Still sitting in Oliver's camera bag, untouched since the accident. But before I could move, my phone buzzed with a text. From Marcus, found some old photos of Oliver. Want to help me develop them? Darkroom's free tonight. As I stared at the message, the overhead light flickered, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw a shadow move against the wall. A shadow that shouldn't have been there. A shadow with all the wrong angles. The diary felt heavy in my hands as another text came through. You really should come. Oliver would have wanted you to see these. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I pulled Oliver's red envelope from his camera bag. Inside were strips of undeveloped film, carefully wound and protected from light. Oliver's final warning echoed in my mind. Don't develop them in the dark. Another text from Marcus buzzed on my phone. Coming to the dark room. These photos won't develop themselves. I left his message unanswered. Instead, I called the one person who might understand. James, Oliver's photography teacher. He'd always encouraged Oliver's talent, treating him more like a protege than a student. Mrs. Thompson. His voice sounded tired when he answered. I was just thinking about Oliver. James, I need your help. It's about Oliver's last photos. And Marcus, there was a long pause. Come to my home studio. Now, don't go to the school darkroom. 20 minutes later, I sat in James's bright modern studio, the red envelope clutched in my hands. The room was filled with professional lighting equipment. No shadows could survive here. I should have said something sooner, James said, examining the film strips. Oliver came to me about 2 months ago. He was scared, said his photos were showing things that couldn't be there. What kinds of things? James hesitated. At first I thought it was just double exposure, light leaks. But then he showed me the progression. The figure getting closer, always behind Marcus. My phone buzzed again. Marcus, the darkroom gets lonely, like the ridge that night. James saw the message, and his face paled. Don't respond. Marcus hasn't been the same since. Well, I'm not even sure that's Marcus anymore. What do you mean? He pulled out a folder, spreading photos across his desk. They were from the school photography club, spanning the past year. In the earlier ones, Marcus looked normal, a typical teenager with an easy smile. But in each subsequent photo, his image became increasingly distorted, his features somehow wrong, like a poor copy of himself. Oliver noticed it first. James explained. Said Marcus kept pushing him to take photos in specific places. Always at sunset, always in locations with old histories. Miller's Ridge was the last one. My phone lit up again. This time a photo from Marcus. A blurry shot of Oliver's gravestone, taken at night. The timestamp read, 2 minutes ago. James quickly began setting up his equipment. We need to develop these photos in full light. Oliver was trying to capture whatever was happening to Marcus. If he succeeded, a loud bang interrupted him. The studio's back door flying open in a gust of wind. The lights flickered once, twice. Don't let them go out, James said sharply, moving to check the breaker box. That's how it travels, through the darkness between light. I stood frozen, watching shadows stretch across the floor. My phone buzzed one final time. Too late, should have come to the dark room. Now I'm coming to you. James rushed back, practically snatching the film from my hands. We don't have much time. These need to be developed now. As he worked, I could hear footsteps in the hallway, outside. Slow, deliberate, wrong, somehow. Like someone trying to remember how to walk naturally. Almost done, James muttered, as the first photo began to appear. The footsteps stopped right outside the studio door. A knock, 3 precise taps that sounded nothing like knuckles on wood. Mrs. Thompson, Marcus's voice called out. But it wasn't quite his voice anymore. I brought more photos of Oliver. From that last day. Don't you want to see your son's final moments? James held up the first developed photo, and my breath caught in my throat. It showed Marcus at Miller's Ridge, but behind him was something that wore darkness, like a cloak. Its limbs too long, its face a void where features should be, and it was looking directly at the camera, directly at Oliver. The studio door handle began to turn. James slammed his body against the studio door, just as it began to open. The UV lights, he shouted. The switch by the computer. Turn them all on. I lunged for the switch, flipping it just as the door burst open. Intense blue-white light flooded the room, and what stood in the doorway, what wore Marcus's face like an ill-fitting mask, recoiled with a sound no human throat could make. In the harsh UV light, I could see what Oliver's photos had captured. Marcus's skin seemed to ripple, like dark water disturbed by wind. His features shifted, struggling to maintain their shape, and his eyes were endless pits of shadow. Mrs. Thompson, it said, Marcus's voice distorting. Don't you want to know what Oliver's last words were? More photos were developing behind me. I could hear the chemicals working. James kept his body braced against the door frame, holding the UV light like a weapon. You're not Marcus, I said, finding strength in my voice. What did you do to my son? The thing wearing Marcus's face smiled. All wrong angles and too many teeth. Oliver was so talented. He saw things others missed. Like how the shadows moved. Like what I really am. He would have made such a perfect vessel. The photos, Mrs. Thompson. James called out. Look at the last one. I turned to the development tray, where the final photo was becoming clear. It showed the moment before Oliver's accident. But it wasn't a fall that killed him. The photo showed Marcus, or what used to be Marcus, pushing my son. And in the corner of the frame, Oliver's hand was holding something up. Something that reflected light. A mirror. He figured it out, James said, his voice tight. Reflections trap them. That's why it couldn't take him. Why it needed Marcus to. The thing in the doorway hissed, its borrowed face beginning to melt. Clever boy, but he still died. And now, I reached for Oliver's camera bag, still slung over my shoulder. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was the small mirror he always carried to check his lighting. His last line in the diary suddenly made sense. He wasn't warning me about the photos. He was telling me how to fight back. I pulled out the mirror just as the creature lunged. The UV lights caught its reflection, multiplying the effect, and Marcus's face split open like tissue paper in rain. What emerged was shadow given form, ancient and hungry, but trapped in the mirror's reflection, caught between light and glass. it began to fold in on itself. A sound like tearing silk filled the air, and then, nothing. Marcus's empty clothes crumpled to the floor. The shadow that had worn him was gone, trapped in the space between reflections. In the silence that followed, James slowly released his grip on the door. "It's over," he said quietly. "Oliver, he knew. He left you everything you needed to finish what he started." I picked up the developed photos with trembling hands. The final shot showed more than just the moment before Oliver's death. In the background, barely visible, were other faces in the shadows, other missing people, other vessels the creature had worn and discarded. "There will be more questions," James said, gathering the photos. "About Marcus, about what happened that day. Are you ready for that?" I touched the diary in my pocket, thinking of Oliver's final message. My brave, clever son, fighting until the end, making sure I had all the pieces to uncover the truth. "Yes," I said, "for Oliver, for Marcus, for all of them." We spent that night documenting everything: the photos, the diary entries, the evidence of what had stalked my son through his camera lens. In time, other families would learn the truth about their missing loved ones, about the darkness that had claimed them. But sometimes, on dark nights, I still check the shadows and photographs, still carry Oliver's mirror, still remember his final gift to me wasn't just the truth, it was the means to fight back. Because somewhere out there, in the spaces between light and shadow, other creatures wait. And like Oliver, I've learned to keep watching, keep documenting, keep fighting. After all, some stories don't end just because we've turned the last page. The shadows are always hungry for new faces to wear. But now, thanks to my son, we know how to see them coming.